and welcome to A Drummer's Guide to the podcast all about the things that it takes to be a professional musician aside from actually playing your instrument. My name is Emily Dolan Davis. I have been drumming since 1999, professionally since 2008, and helping others to do the same since 2018. And that's why we're here today. So I want to start out just by saying thank you to all the wonderful people that made it onto the live stream. I did that a week ago, which will be 2 weeks ago when this comes out. But yeah, it was so fantastic. It was so lovely just to see all the bonkers squad, all the people that, you know, we spent a lot of time together during COVID specifically. Created a little community. It was more based around when I was doing my recording sessions, and I would be recording for people alongside live streaming so people could see the process, and then we would have really fun chats. And I mean, these streams they would go on for 3 hours sometimes. They were amazing. Also very tiring. You know me, I exert a lot of energy when I'm interacting with people. So yeah, by the end of those sessions, I was always like, woof, but always worth it. Always, always, always. So yes, I just want to say a big thank you to all the people that turned up. Also, loads of my students turned up. That was really fun. I know a couple of people didn't get the email, unfortunately, when I was going live, so they missed it, but the replay's up now anyway, so you can have a watch of that, have a listen to that. Speaking of watching, if you are watching, as you can see, I've changed my angle, I've changed my background. This is so dumb, but it's who I am, so I thought that I'd let you into this. But so where my camera was before, where it has been for the last few months, it's kind of in a corner, right, of my living room. And as you would have seen if you've watched, there were windows behind me. And what that meant was the lighting was always so bizarre. And if it got dark outside as I was recording, I'd start looking very strange, and then if it would get light again, I'd look even stranger. And I was like, I can't, like, it's such a silly thing, it's such a small thing, but you know when you just get fixated on something. I was like, I don't like this, I need natural light on my face. Like, I was using lights, but then when, like I say, when it was getting darker outside, the lights just made me look really odd. I can't explain to you why it irks me so much, but it does. So anyway, now I've moved my setup, so now you're getting the 2 windows of natural light on my face. I did this yesterday, and then I did a call, and it happened to be very, very bright outside. And when I tell you, I was washed out like nothing. I looked like an alien. So I was like, oh my gosh, right, okay, there's going to be issues here too. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm in a new spot in the room. I'm in the same room, but in a different spot. So anyway, let's talk about today's episode. So I recently finished a book, and I think that I mentioned that I was reading it on another episode. So it's a book by an author called Brené Brown, and the book is called Daring Greatly, right? This is the book. I finished the book a couple of days ago. Really interesting book. Essentially, it's about like having the courage to be vulnerable, basically. And as someone who is a recovering perfectionist, I use the word recovering very tentatively because, man alive, is it a journey. But anyway, it's kind of around that, and kind of I'm someone who, when I go into anything, I'm very aware that I don't want to go in not knowing anything. I don't want to look like an idiot. I don't, all these things. And for various reasons, that's how I think. I think a lot of us feel that way. I think it's quite a natural reaction to feel that you don't want to look stupid going into something. And I kind of was thinking about that, and basically the very end of this book, it ends with this quote, and I wrote it down so that I can make sure that I say it properly. So it says, daring greatly isn't about winning or losing, it's about courage. And by daring greatly, I read that as being vulnerable, and being vulnerable is a positive thing, by the way, very positive. It means you're able to connect with people, all of that. It's kind of why I do this podcast. So I thought that was really interesting, and I loved it. I love it as a as a concept. Like, it's not about, for instance, coming into something and being good at it. It's the courage of actually stepping into doing it in the first place. That's the courageous thing. Like, that is the important thing. It's not about whether you're good at it or bad at it, you know, that very binary black and white thinking. Like, forget that. It's about the fact that you did it in the first place. The bravery is the thing that's important. And then I was like, let me think about this, because I was thinking back over various sort of moments in my career. And I realized that the moments that were most impactful, most pivotal, were ones where I had a split second of bravery / what felt like insanity at the time. Because I think if you've listened to this, apologies if this is your first time listening to this podcast, because it might seem I might not go into enough detail about who I am, what my personality is like. But for those that have, which I feel is the majority, you will know that I have been, still am to a degree, have been a very anxious person. And I've used that to my advantage for sure, because what it means is whatever I go into, I try to be incredibly overly prepared, like to retrospectively a stupid degree. Like it's I wouldn't recommend it, basically, purely because yes, it's fine that you can come in and do the job and you do a good job because you've thought of all the eventualities and all of that, but it leaves you feeling a bit like you're in a straitjacket and there's no room to breathe. And I think that having that space of not knowing all the answers, of not playing out all the eventualities, actually brings a softness to, do you know what, to your interactions. I'm going to say to me and my interactions. That kind of not knowing everything, not knowing anything, that's what I feel like most of the time. Not knowing everything, it brings a humanness to me. And also it leads to an opportunity for connection, which is essentially what the whole of this book is about that I read. It's about being vulnerable and being open to being human around people and connecting with people, not being perfect and all these things. So anyway, as I said, I kind of was reflecting and I realized that despite me being this very anxious person and wanting to make sure that I'm in every situation, knowing everything, all the things, actually the most important moments of my career, and consequently actually my life as well, which I won't really go into, maybe a little bit, but they've come when I think they've come when I haven't had the time to over prepare. They have been very much in the moment and reactive, and I've had a moment of bravery and I've just gone yes, and then I've worked it out afterwards. So I thought that I would run you through a few of these, because I think it's really important to recognize that you're not going to feel ready for probably anything that you do, honestly. You might feel like when you come to it, I'd like to hope that you feel ready to a degree, obviously be prepared, but the bravery of just jumping in, knowing that you don't know everything, is actually really good. And I will say something else that I also recognized about myself. So you will know this because I've said this on previous episodes. I would get really wound up by people. Now, this is an extreme and I still don't agree with this, but when people come into rehearsals and they're not prepared, as in they haven't learnt the material, they're not, now look, obviously at a professional level, you need to come in, you need to learn the material, blah, 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 blah. What also used to upset me was people that would take on roles that they didn't have the knowledge to do the job. And I realized that, yes, although this is a little annoying, the reason that it really gets to my soul is that I think that there was an element of jealousy of their ability to just say yes and work it out as they went. I think that is probably quite a big part of why because it wasn't just, oh, I'm annoyed. It's like deep root, like really annoyed me, like, to my soul. And I think it's partly to do with that, basically. And I find that really interesting to kind of see it through that lens. And I wonder if you have a similar thing. Like, I honestly, I don't have enough fingers and toes to tell you how many times that kind of thing has happened to me where I felt like that. But anyway, I digress. I thought that was an interesting aside, like just reframing it as like, hold on a second, maybe there's something else going on here. Not maybe it's not just because they're not prepared. Like it seems like an irrational reaction and is so much deeper than that. I think, like I say, the fact that they had the ability to say yes to something when they don't have the skills, but then work it out as they go. I think I just wish I was a little more like that. I wish I had a bit more of that bravery. It is bravery, however you want to pitch it, whatever. As I look at it now, I'm like, that is the brave thing to do. They might not see it as that, that might not be their intention, but in my world, that would be a brave thing to be like, I don't quite know what I'm doing yet, but yes. And this is where I come to my experiences of moments that I have done that. And they have been quite pivotal, basically. So the first one that I could think of that, I mean, there's been so many, honestly, there have. Like I say, a lot of the time I make sure that I'm over prepared for certain moments, but sometimes I've said yes and just gone, cross my fingers. And one of the ones that comes to mind is when I was working with Cher Lloyd, who she is a singer. She's actually out in the States now. She's actually really big in the States, as I'm aware, as far as I'm aware, or was for a while. But anyway, she started out over here on the X Factor. And I was involved with her touring band with her first album. Lovely girl, by the way. She was 17 years old. She was a child when I worked with her. And yeah, very sweet. Thrust into madness very early on. And I really felt for her for various reasons that I might talk about. I think I have. Did I tell you about the time that we got bottled off stage at V Festival in Chelmsford? Did I ever tell you about that? 17 years old being bottled off stage, as in she was 17 years old. Awful. She was it was awful. She was a child. It was the worst thing I've ever seen done to a teenager. Like, oh, it was awful. It, like, to the point that we went off stage. We had to go off stage because it was just impossible. It was impossible. And then we went back on and finished the set. But anyway, why was I saying this? Yes, Cher Lloyd, right. So obviously leading up to the actual rehearsals and stuff like that, I knew what I was doing. I'd gone for an audition. I knew what the sketch is. I knew there was electronics involved. I overly prepared with my electronics. I knew all the songs inside out. Side note, I think I did mention this once. The musical director at the time said to me, with the electronic side of stuff, oh, don't worry, you can just mime it, we'll put it on track. And I was like, no, 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 no. I have practiced this to death. I will be playing it live. Like, there's no way that I'm miming, sorry. Like, just everything in my being is like, no. And he was like, all right, fair enough, we'll see how we go with it. And straight away he was like, all right, fair enough. And I was like, yes, come on, don't ask me to mime. Goodness. Anyway, so also at one of the gigs, there was another MD that came to the gig and asked him, was like, oh, is Emily playing that live? And he was like, yep, she fought me on that. Like, literally, she's playing everything. And I was like, come on. Proud moments of just pure idiocy. But anyway, so that was all fine. Coming into rehearsals, I kind of knew what I was aiming at. But once we got into rehearsals, and I definitely have spoken about this, it must have been the last day of rehearsal, the last 2 days of rehearsals maybe. And the MD said to me, he said, by the way, like, obviously he'd been clocking everyone in the band, seeing everyone's personality. Like, we all didn't know each other. Like, I knew the guitarist, to be fair. We'd played together with Tricky, but so we were kind of learning each other, and he said to me I think it was the last day of rehearsal, so I remember being very frantic about this. He said, look, I think if you're happy with this, I'd like you to run track. And I'd never run track before, but my brain freaked out, but my mouth went, yeah, all right. And again, it was this moment of bravery of just like lean into this. I was terrified. I was terrified because I literally didn't know what I was doing. I did not know what I was doing. I remember it was before lunch because he said, okay, great. What we'll do is whilst we go for lunch, we'll get the crew guys to move the HD24 over to your area and then we can run it and you can run it. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And in my brain, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, and to me, that is the biggest issue. It is, if I don't know what I'm doing, I feel so unbelievably vulnerable. It is just insanity, like, and not in a good way. Well, I think vulnerability is quite a hard thing to enjoy, but I just said yes, and that was my first time of sort of like learning how to run a show using HD24, which is a playback machine if you don't know. And I started doing it in rehearsals and it was fine. Sort of, it was more learning the ropes. So he was just showing me how to do things, how to change things, da 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 da. And then we went into production rehearsals, like I believe it was the next day, if not maybe 2 days later, down at, is it Cliffs Pavilion, I think we went down to? And we did a production rehearsal down there, just one day, I think it was. And we were running it, and I remember him, and I've definitely told this story, and I ran it with the track, and it's so funny, when you get given something else to do on a show, all of a sudden you're playing, you realize how well you know it, because I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just stressing about running the show. So we did it this run, and at the end he was like, yeah, no, really great. So like, just when my leg's going right now, I'm still uncomfortable about this. He said, so maybe next time we run it, like just leave a bit more of a gap between songs, because you're rushing them a little bit when you're hitting play. Like leave space for them to clap. You know, it's okay. You can leave space. And I burst into tears. Because it was essentially like, you're not good enough. That's what I heard. Like, you didn't do a good job. Again, perfectionist tendencies. Absolutely awful. So anyway, he's like, right, come with me, come on, let's go. And we sort of like went into the seats, and he sort of like, look, you're doing really well. It's all good. He talked me down. He was fantastic. Shout out to Marcus. He was fantastic. He was very sweet. And I was fine after that. It was fine. But that was that moment of just saying yes and being courageous, being brave for a second, but it gave me this whole new skill set, this whole new experience. And it was, I essentially became because Marcus wasn't, the MD wasn't out with us on the road. And it was, I think it was then that he sort of said to me, look, I want you to be the on the road MD. I want you to be looking after Cher, like liaising with her, make sure she's okay, obviously with the band as well, make sure they're okay. Like, I want you, if there's anything wrong, I want Cher coming to you. And I was like, okay, sure. And that was actually a bit of an easier thing to say yes to, and I don't know why. I really don't know why, because that was absolutely terrifying as well, because it felt like I was being given this responsibility, and I was like, I don't know why you're giving me this, but he sort of said to me, he said, look, you're really reliable. And I was like, wow, that's a cool thing to be known as, isn't it? Obviously now I'm like, I really don't care. But yeah, he's like, look, you're really reliable and I feel like I can trust you with this. So can you go do that? And I was like, yeah, okay. So that certainly was a tour of learning so many things about just... And again, like I say, going back to this getting bottled off stage thing, I was the MD. She was the one that turned to me, and I said to her, do you want to get off stage? Like, it was that kind of thing. So I called it as in, she was like, yeah. And I was like, right, everyone off. Scary to have that kind of, that responsibility, especially at that age. How old was I? Oh, I suppose I was 24, so, but still young. I mean, 24 is young. Isn't it? I think it is. I think it's young. I think I'm still young. So anyway, that was definitely one of them, where I was sort of chose to be brave when everything in my being would suggest otherwise, to say no to something. I guess I'm a sucker for an opportunity. I think this is it. My bravery comes out when I see like a new opportunity. I'm like, ooh, okay, be brave for just like 10 seconds. That's all it takes. 10 seconds of bravery. Anyway, one that I have spoken about multiple times and I will cite again because it was really important for me. Yeah, probably I'd say musically, the most fulfilling gig I've ever done. Certainly the most challenging. One of my favourite groups of people, for sure, and that was the Voice Kids. So let's go back to the very first time that I met the musical director for the Voice Kids. And that was, again, it's when I get in these situations where there's no time to actually analyse. And I find that interesting as I'm saying that, because I'm like, I'm very good at talking myself out of things, I think. Or no, it's not even that. I don't know what it is, but I think when I'm put on the spot to be brave for a second, I think I do rise to that occasion. I guess I just don't put myself in those positions enough, maybe. So anyway, Voice Kids. So the first time I ever met the MD for that it was a jam night, and I was feeling so unwell. I was just run down. If I remember rightly, I just felt exhausted, and I was umming and ahhing about going to get up and play a couple of songs, whatever. And I was like, oh, I'm exhausted. I don't think I'm going to go. Anyway, I get a phone call from the guy leading the jam, Rich. And he was like, dude, like, can you come be in the house band tonight? And I was like, dude, I don't feel great. Like, he was like, please, there are loads of people coming down tonight. Like, can you please, like, Dave Tinchett's going to be there. Da, da, da. And instantly I was like, oh, I haven't met him yet. And I'd seen him play, and I was like, I really want to meet this dude. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. I just said yes. And I was like, all right, fine. And went, and it was one of the best jam nights ever. It was just a great group of people. It was really fun. It was the best. Like, there's a lot of catalyst things that happened that day in that one, whatever it was, 4 or 5 hour jam session that has led to a lot of opportunities since. Anyway, so saying yes in that moment because I was just putting, and was it bravery? Maybe, because I just felt so not okay, just exhausted. Anyway, whatever. So years and years later, I get a phone call from Dave. We'd done a few bits and bobs over the years, like very small things. And that's when we met up. I remember it was the day before my birthday in 2019. And he just sat me down and like explained, said, do you want to come do the Voice Kids? And he ran through how it ran. He spoke about the importance of reading. I knew at the time my reading wasn't there, but I had a moment of bravery, and it really was. When I tell you I was sat there and I was battling with myself, like, oh my God, I really want to do this. I want to do this so bad, but I can't read. You're going to look stupid. What if you can't do it? Like, you're going to make yourself look like a fool. You're going to let everyone down. This is another big thing for me, letting people down. It's just not an option for me. So I was really internally battling this. And I think that's part of the reason that I was getting as much information as I could in the moment, which, by the way, I'm so glad that I did. It's one of the first times I've really asked a lot of questions about a gig before saying yes to it. And I would highly recommend, just so you understand in your own mind the way you need to understand it. And even say that, look, can I just ask you some questions so I can get an image in my mind how this runs, because I need to do that so I can process what to expect. And Dave was great. He was just like, yeah, of course, ask away. So we literally went through it. I think it helped, like, he just gets my personality as well. We're both Geminis. In fact, his birthday's the day after mine. So there's an understanding. There's something about Geminis. We have an understanding of, I want to say, we have a unique way of communicating sometimes. And when you meet someone else as a Gemini, like, great, we can speak our language. Anyway, as he was sort of explaining this, the elephant in the room for me was definitely the reading thing. And I was like, and I even asked him if I could sort of like circumvent the reading, and he essentially just went no. And I was like, right, okay. And I just, like I say, it was this battling, but I just had a moment of bravery of just like, yeah, okay, let's do it. Obviously, after that, I completely over-prepared and boot camped myself into, sorry, I just spat, reading and learning how to read in a decent way, and in a way that was not just good enough for the gig, but past what the gig needed, so that I never fell out of my depth. And I would say that I think in my 4 years doing the Voice Kids, I can't even remember a time that I was like, no, maybe like once or twice I was out of my depth, but actually it wasn't to do with reading. it was more to do with style of playing, because you had to cover so many different styles. But anyway, maybe more than a couple, maybe a handful, maybe like 5. But anyway, that being able to have that moment of bravery, of not knowing, of not being perfect, of not, and being vulnerable enough as well to ask the question, being vulnerable enough to let him know that, look, I am not the greatest reader right now. I will get there, but I need to be honest with you. And I think that honesty carries so much weight, I believe. It really does. Because I think if you're sat there being the person going, I know it all, I know what I'm doing, da, 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 even subconsciously, I think people can tell their BS radar goes off, I think. Personally, I have that experience, at least. Even if I don't know what it is, sometimes I can be like, oh, there's something off there and I don't know what is happening, but it makes me take a step back. Whereas if people are very honest with me and like, look, I'm really struggling with this, it makes me take a step forward. That is how I feel. It's taken me years and years and years to recognize this, and then years and years and years to then have that bravery to lean in. But I think it's really, really valuable. And then speaking on things like that, this podcast is such a great example of. I feel like I'm trying to big myself up, but I'm just going to say it the way that I feel it. I feel brave doing this podcast. I felt brave the first episode I ever did. Oh, I can't tell you how terrified I was. But every episode that I do, when I start letting people into my imperfections, of which there are many, I think you've realised this, I'm terrified. I think we all have this, fear of other people judging us and all that sort of stuff. Like, it's awful. It's really awful. I really feel like I'm often laying my heart out on a table, and you lot, no, you're not, but the metaphorical audience are there with knives. What is actually the case is that people often are putting their hearts next to mine and just going, yeah, me too, like I've had that. And there's something so beautiful about that. But I have to tell you that this podcast is a very vulnerable thing for me. I think over the years it's sort of changed. I think by starting out and doing it, just the act of doing it felt like a very courageous thing to do, a very brave thing, a very scary thing. Let's call it that. Very scary. I was terrified. I felt vulnerable. It felt awkward, uncomfortable. But I always told myself this isn't about me. It's about other people and just letting people have information. That was all it was about. And I feel like at the very beginning it was not very much, but a little more like practical, if you like. But as time has gone on, it's become more about the internal workings, the feelings, just the internal workings, and being more vulnerable about the experience of being a musician, different things that we all go through, and so I have to say that I think that this is certainly the most consistently vulnerable thing that I've done, especially like publicly. Oh God, but it has been the most rewarding. It's been like, I can't tell you how wonderful it is when I get messages or I speak to people and they're just like, yeah, I've had that experience too. Thank you so much for sharing about that. Like, just that connection. There's nothing like it. There really, really isn't. And I feel grateful for that. So at this point, I want to say thank you to you. But what I also will say as well, I'm talking about these brave moments that I feel I was brave for a moment and just went, okay, yes, and they've turned out well. Let me tell you, that's not always the case. I'm not going to pretend like I've got a 100% hit record, and you know that I haven't if you've been listening at any amount of time. Let's go for ye old faithful when I said yes to my first recording session, and that went completely wrong. Everything could have gone wrong. When you talk about like not being ready or getting into a situation, looking silly, not being good enough, being judged by others, it was a cacophony of all of that. It was my leg is going because I still feel uncomfortable about it. It literally is the outcome was the worst thing I could ever imagine in the moment. And I say that because actually it was the best thing to happen, because it happened. I survived, and then I worked through it, and I addressed things, and I faced things that were really, really hard. So and in fact, let's talk about that. I think that that was a courageous thing, to face these things that went wrong head on, rather than making excuses and walking away, which would have been the easier option in a lot of ways. But I'm lucky in that I did choose to do that for whatever reason. Call it stubbornness. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was just simply that I couldn't give it up. I was so deeply in love with drumming, and there's no way I could have let it go. Like, it just wasn't an option, really. And so I had to face it, and it was hard and it was painful. But again, that's part of the vulnerability thing, the daring greatly thing, is that is the risk. And sometimes it does play out like that, but is it worth it? Absolutely. There's another one actually that I thought of when I was, just before I came on, I was trying to think of examples of when things go wrong, when I say yes to things. This is one that I have not spoken about, and it's partly because, in all honesty, I don't have a great recollection of what happened. But when I was playing with Brian Ferry as part of his corporate band, the way that I got into that was because I was covering for his drummer, who essentially went AWOL at the time. And I think I'd been playing with him for I don't even know how long, a year. But anyway, there was this gig that came in that the other drummer, the old drummer, really wanted to do, let Brian know, and Brian wanted to let him do it for various reasons, but didn't want to be, he'd already booked me, and he didn't want to be like, oh, just not book you, just chuck you off the gig. So he said, do you want to come and play percussion instead? And I was like, yeah, sure. Now look, I can hit a cajon. I can do very basic things on congas. Or bongos, like the basic. I can shake a shaker and a tambourine. But past that, I'm not great. I'm not a percussionist, certainly not. I think there is this misconception that if you can play drums, you can play percussion. No, 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 no. No, no, no. Percussion is a whole thing. But anyway, I just said yes. And I think I like I say, my recollection is bad, but I think it was partly because I didn't want to let people down. I didn't want to say no because I thought that would lose me the gig completely. Bah, 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 bah. Anyway, we went to do this rehearsal before this gig. I feel like it was in Mallorca. I don't know why I have this in my head. And basically I came in and do you know what? I'll be honest, I don't even remember practicing for this, so I don't know what I was thinking. There were a couple of timbales there. I was like, oh goodness, okay. And obviously Love Is the Drug, if you know any Brian Ferry songs, there's lots of timbale going on there. I don't know what I was thinking. And it just got to a point where they were like, you know what? No, maybe not. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, no. I think it was a conversation of both parties just being like, should we just not? I'm just going to go. And I remember feeling slightly embarrassed because I definitely left during the rehearsal. But anyway, not enough for it to scar me because like I said, I don't have a huge recollection of this. So things do go wrong. It did not, what's the word? It did not, motivate me to go and learn to play percussion better. I can tell you that. I was just like, what are we doing? It felt more like that. Why did I say yes? This is silly. It just felt silly. I felt silly, but not in a, like I say, not in a scarring kind of way. More just like a So just because you're being brave, it doesn't mean that things will go right, but it can open up your world to so many different things. And I have to say at this point, if there's one thing that I wish, is that I was able to be braver sooner, because the empowering feeling that you get as well from being put in a situation where you literally don't know anything, or, and I'm not saying that professionally, maybe that's not great, but like an example for me in my life recently is boxing, right? Boxing is something that I have always wanted to try. I've always been drawn to it. I remember my earliest memory of any sort of boxing thing was my mum. I can't remember what she was doing, but she was doing something to do with an art degree, and she went down to this boxing gym, and I remember it as she was sketching the boxers, which I thought was really cool, and I was watching them doing all their skipping, and I thought that was awesome. Retrospectively, apparently she was getting them to draw, which I find amazing, very interesting. Anyway, and the next time I remember sort of like clocking on about boxing, there was a drummer, percussionist called Sudha, used to play with Faithless for years, and she did boxing. I remember watching her and just being like, wow, you're really cool. Then Tricky did boxing, and I was like, that is awesome. Anyway, so it's sort of always been in the back of my mind, but also so has, don't do boxing, you'll hurt your wrist and then you won't be able to play drums. Anyway, when all my divorce separation stuff started happening, I was like, at a point, I think my logic was, well, you're alone now, you better make sure that you can defend yourself so you can walk around town by yourself. And that's purely because I love walking around by myself. I love walking around. And I was like, I'm going to start a boxing class. And I had never done a thing. I literally went in not knowing anything. I was terrified. But walking into that class, that very first class, and knowing that I would not be any good, knowing that I didn't know a thing, was terrifying. Like, absolutely terrifying. The most vulnerable that I could ever feel. Let me tell you, walking out of that class after that first class, the elation, the rush, it was like nothing. I was so hyped up. I loved it. And 2 years later, I'm still doing it. I still adore it. It's been its own journey of like not knowing things and not being good enough. And when that happens, you get hit in the face a lot. So it's quite immediate feedback. But I love it. I absolutely love it. And if I hadn't had that moment of bravery signing up to this class at like whatever time it was, 10 o'clock at night, and then not talking myself out of it in the few days it was between booking it and actually going to do it, my life would look very, very different. And I'm so glad that I had that moment of bravery. So I wish that I could be that brave earlier in my life. I'm trying to lean into being that brave now, basically. And just because I don't know how to do something, I'm trying to not let it stop me. The next thing on my list is like salsa or something like that, or some sort of, I keep seeing like Argentine tango. I don't know, something that literally no experience. I've been to one salsa class actually, maybe like 15 years ago. I don't remember anything about it, but I want to start leaning into things like that, of just like feeling very uncomfortable. And like I say, it's the perfectionist in me. I want to be good straight away. And I think a lot of us have that. And just knowing that I'm not going to be good, and that's okay. And actually, it's so much more fulfilling because the growth is just bonkers. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, anyway. I just thought that I would share this. I'm not sure that this is useful to you in any way, but I do think that having that moment of vulnerability, bravery, just leaning in when you don't know all the answers, I think can be, it just makes such a difference, I think. It's that thing of getting out of your comfort zone, essentially, isn't it? It's kind of that cliche, which is a thing. It definitely is. So I'm going to finish by just saying the quote again. So daring greatly isn't about winning or losing, it's about courage. So just be courageous, take a courageous step, even if you think, oh, like, you'll work it out, it'll be fine. And even if it isn't fine, you'll still learn something from it, you'll still take something from it. It might be painful, I've experienced that, but it will be worth it, I believe. Anyway, I hope you're doing well, wherever you are, whatever you're up to. Also, part of the reason I've also moved this setup around, I think I might be able to do live streams from here. If I've worked this out, I'm looking over at my router right now. If I've managed to work this out, I would like to do more live streams, but maybe more in a casual way, And maybe, yeah, like not as an episode necessarily, because I did find that episode quite restrictive in terms of not being able to just chat with you all, like chat. I felt like because I was having to do it as an episode, I was having to like make it concise, I suppose, and very punchy. Whereas if you've been on any of my other live streams, you will know that I like a meander. I like a, just chilling. Like it's a little more relaxed. So I think I might try and start doing that. Whether it's going to be a monthly thing, whether it's going to be more regular than that or irregular, who knows? I mean, it's me. I couldn't tell you. But anyway, I'm going to look into that because I loved doing that live stream, but I really missed being able to just honestly chat rubbish with you all, mainly about food. I mean, that was such a big part of all the live streams. It was the food. It was the food. We were talking about food all the time. So anyway, right, that's just a thought that I've had. So we shall see. I might even put something out on Instagram now just to see what the vibe is. See if people would be interested in that. But anyway, sending you lots of love, and if you usual little thing at the end. If you enjoyed this episode, ooh, please do feel free to like, share, and subscribe. If you would like to suggest a subject topic for a future episode, you can go to emilydrums.com/AMA, as in ask me anything. And if you would like to look into one-on-one coaching with me, you can book in for a free discovery call where we talk about your needs, how it can help you. It's 30 minutes, it's free. You can go to emilydrums.com. And if you would like to just come follow me over on Instagram, if you want to find out more about these live streams, if you're interested in that, then hit me up on Instagram at @HeyEmilyDrums. There should be something there by the time you get there, I hope. We shall see. Anyway, sending lots of love once again, big cuddles to you, and I shall see you next time for another subject. All right, bye.